win the Stanley Cup!
Here it is for you guys. Enjoy.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of We the Thunder. I'm the Stash. There's no Shooter this week, but we got Schoolie. And filling in for Shooter, we got Casey Hudson at the Sports Case. What's going on, guys? How's it going this week? How was your New Year's weekend?
Well, I lost my voice, and not because I did anything too ridiculous or exciting. I just learned that I'm an extremely competitive person when it comes to games, and St. Pete Pier had some nice fireworks, so nothing too bad. If you guys hear me cracking in and out, it's nothing too crazy. I'm not sick. I just talk too much, clearly.
I spent New Year's Eve sitting with 19,000 of my other closest friends watching the Bolts win. So, you know, 0 losses in 2023 so far for the Bolts. I'll take it.
Yeah.
For Tampa Bay as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah. We have it. No Tampa sport has lost in 2023.
Yeah. It'd be great if they kept it that way.
Yeah, it was nice, quiet even for me. I'm only on Friday for SmackDown, and the consecutive 20-year streak for John Cena, that match. That was pretty dope. Had a great time there with my buddy. So my voice still hasn't fully recovered actually from Friday because I'm a huge Mark, and I mark out like crazy. I'm chanting the whole time at those things. So, but yeah, great weekend of hockey as well. Great week of hockey since we were here last week. Before we get into it, Casey, just go ahead and what's going on with you lately? It's been a little while since you've been on the show. Tell us what you've been up to and what you got going on coming in the new year.
I know. I thought I got banned for some of my takes, but it turns out that I didn't. We are all just very busy. But the cool part is, I'm sure you guys know her very well. I get to work with Kaylee Mizell now. So Kaylee and I have 2 shows with Odyssey Sports, which is under the umbrella of like BetQL Network and BetMGM. And one, Jolly Rogers and Touchdowns, covering the Bucks, which is great. And then Pucks and Bolts, where we get to just sit there and talk hockey 3 times a week, sometimes more. I try to make it out to as many practices and stuff as possible. And that's where we'll kind of sit down and chat with the guys one-on-one and get some different episodes out. So, yeah, Kaylee and I have 2 shows on Odyssey, Pucks and Bolts, Jolly Rogers and Touchdowns. When I'm not consumed in that, I am on the social side for BetQL Network, and I do a TV show with BetQL Network called The Sunday Spread, where we take a look at the league and best bets. People trust me sometimes. Sometimes they don't. Week by week, it changes. So 2023, don't know if I'm feeling lucky quite yet, but we'll see how the next taping goes, if I got any better throughout the season. So just a lot of shows, which I'm really excited about because, as you guys know, clearly I like talking, and my voice doesn't usually crap out on me, but I think I just kind of hit a max at the end of the year there.
Well, yeah, when you're that busy, I would imagine so. I mean, we've all had the opportunity to be on Kaylee's pre-show when she was doing it for Valley Sports, and she's been gracious enough to come on here a few times. So let her know we all said hi.
I will. She's amazing, and I've learned so much from her, getting to work with her. So it's been a really cool experience, but also just being able to have a lot more creative control. Odyssey's honestly been great in terms of what we cannot do, and there's really no cannot, as long as we're delivering to fans and, you know, just making sports something that's not dramatic but entertaining and exciting, and that's what I'm most excited about. So brand new chapter. I think we're about 6 months in with football, 3 months in with hockey. We started right before the home opener, so the deadline to get that show up and running and everything, that was pretty intense, but it's been fantastic. and I'm ready to get through the whole season with pucks and bolts and see what else we get to deliver on that scope.
Yeah, I mean, that's a grind right there. You start talking about 3 times a week with hockey and how long the season is. We know what that's like, just going once a week and then, every day after the playoffs. So I know that's a lot, especially just kind of coming up with it right there and having to get on the fly. So yeah, everyone make sure you go check that out. Great content, I'm sure, stuff behind the scenes too with players and stuff like that. So that's great access. And that's what we're all about too, because it's accessibility too. It's not just about, not being dramatic, but it's also accessibility and how accessible, especially the players are around this area and with this fan base. We have a little bit more exposure, I think, than most other areas because of the way the city is built and how kind of laid back it is too. So it kind of rubs off on the sports players, and they're kind of have their guards down a little bit more, or have their guards down more than maybe in other markets.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, especially because where the arena is, not that you know where to find the guys. That sounds so creepy, but they have to live their lives too, and you kind of know where that's going to take place. And you run into them all the time, and they're so responsive to their fan base. During COVID or after COVID and stuff, killer with the jet skis and whatnot. Like, they could have kind of kept that contained to a different part behind Davis Island, but he did that where fans can see him, and that's where the influencer fun and branding came from. People used to run into Stammer all the time, the coffee shops on DI. It's a community in so many ways, or like a small town in so many ways, but these guys don't feel overwhelmed by the fan base. They really treat everybody like family. At least that's something that I've learned, because when you go up to New York or anywhere else and you see one of the hockey players, and people would debate too. They're like, oh, well, hockey's growing, so maybe people don't recognize them. No, people know who the players are by now. You can at least name 2 of them and recognize them in public. So I think that the culture is just way different down here, and we're rebranding Hockey Town for sure. So I love it. I love this market for hockey.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, we had a really good week of hockey going into the new year with the back-to-backs. We went 3-0 on that stretch, and really started that Montreal game. Which games were you at last week, Schoolie? I forgot. Did you make all 3 of them, or did you miss some of them?
No, I actually only went to the New Year's Eve game. I wasn't at. I know. The shot going into that game on Montreal was Vasi starting.
Right.
We had talked about that on last week's, and I had said that the only way I thought Coot would start Vasi was because of with the Buffalo game postponed and then the Christmas break. You kind of want to keep goalies on that rotation of every couple of days. And so Montreal would have, and he didn't disappoint for Montreal. Really should have gotten the shutout there. Didn't disappoint in Montreal. But that was the big news coming into the Montreal game, was that Vasi was starting that game and no Moose.
I think that break was definitely why he started in it. Brian Elliott's actually had a lot more success than he's getting any credit for, I would say. And Vasi, you could tell where he needs his breaks, because he likes the high volume shots. He doesn't like the games that are kind of going to have a lull to it. So I was surprised because of what they already did to Montreal in Montreal, and then heading back, kind of finding their footing underneath them. It could have easily been a game for Moose. So I think
we've talked Moose quite a bit here, and actually I think the fans have really given him credit this year. You were just mentioning I think he finally feels the love in there. You hear the Moose chants when he's on that ice. We've never really had that single. You had Bish, but they didn't really yell Bish too loud. You have those soup chants. You have those sorrow chants. You have them all over in different. And we finally hear a Moose chant. The problem with the Vasi chant is they always end up playing the music right after Vasi makes a good save when he stops the puck. And they play the music. They don't leave it open there for people to start chanting Vasi. But it's that 2-syllable that gets everybody. But Moose, I think you can hear the Moose chants going around the arena.
Oh, they're definitely getting excited about it. I mean, more in terms of like when teams are talking about matchups, head to heads and stuff. And when you're not sure which goalie is going to be between the pipes yet, it's just kind of like, oh, there's Rafe behind Bassey, and then it's like Brian Elliott. It's like they don't put enough respect behind his name for what he's done so far and how the fan base has responded to him. The Moose is loose is probably the most exciting phrase that people love right now when Coop announces that after practice. And then he just sticks to that one simple phrase, you know. Who's there? The Moose is loose. People love it. We love it in media. We go nuts for it.
Yeah, when he says that, they haven't came up with a phrase there for Vassy yet. So, but Vassy
on the prowl or something. I don't know.
Real quick, I just want to say the chat's been going a little crazy about Cincinnati. Of course, they're talking about the Bengals game going on right now. One of their players had to have CPR and was carted off on a stretcher into an ambulance. So that is what the comments, and people are asking what's happening. So the comments in Cincinnati was one of their players had to have CPR and was let off on a stretcher into an ambulance.
Yeah, that's what I was just trying to look up. So there you go.
Says they've lifted Hamlin from the ground on a stretcher in an ambulance after giving him CPR on the field. Everybody on the field looks understandably shook. The Bills are kneeling in a huddle on the side as the ambulance drives off.
Man, a Bills player, man.
Yep. CPR for 9 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, so
terrifying.
Man, that's intense.
Yeah.
So
sorry. I saw it going on in the chat here, and then Jody, and I could tell Stash was busy looking into something too, and I had a feeling that could have been it. I had looked up at why Casey was talking earlier, and I had my phone going on over Twitter here.
Yeah, well, multitasking on a Monday night, that's important.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that was definitely the conversation, you know, the Vassy. And then going in, you know, after then, that's pretty much a great game. Clorn scored. He'd been kind of looking for a goal there. Stamkos was still looking for that, 598. He'd been on kind of a bad streak there, not scoring.
Yeah.
But Braden Point just filthy again. Brandon Hagel doing what he's been doing too. That top line just keeps producing. So, you know, 2 goals in that game for Braden Point. And then the very next night, here comes the Ranger Nation. And by that, I mean all the locals that decide to put on their Rangers gear and show up at the arena twice a year or whatever it is. I have to avoid going to those games because I like going to all the other games. And, yeah, I don't usually get along very well with Ranger fans. So I was watching that one from home this week as well. But, man, talk about Vassy. That guy, back-to-back nights, he comes out, and he didn't really have a lot of work in that Montreal game. So he came out, and, man, that was just a highlight of him and Shesterkin back and forth. Just highlight reel. Both teams creating chances, getting breaks, getting rushes. Goalie just save after save. And the Lightning just kind of kept playing their game. And the one thing I will say that I keep seeing kind of against these better teams in the league is that early on, it seems like the Lightning have a hard time imposing their tempo and imposing their will and their style of hockey like they've been known to do in the years past. And I think that that's one of the things that probably bothers me the most here going into January and the new year is I still see against the better teams, they're still having a hard time doing that really, you know, early on. Yeah. And as you saw that game going on, it clearly they got into their game and they started playing their game better. They got that late goal again from Braden Point, sent it overtime, and the shootout win with Killer getting the game-winning shootout goal there too. So
yeah,
another great game there.
Well, the thing that stood out to me the most is the fact that the Rangers, I feel like, are kind of a difficult. They're a good team. They're a really good team. In terms of the slow start that I think the Bolts kind of had there was surprising to me because the last little matchup they had there, they won. They put up way more goals. But I think it came down to the fact that not only are they trying to still figure out their structure, but Cooper's making these really like one guy different shuffles to the lines, still trying to find what's going to work. So if you notice some of these tough matchups, the lines have been completely different. So unless the first line comes out and sets the tone or stays over in their zone, gets that whole movement going right out the gate, then it doesn't happen. It takes a minute for everybody else to start to kind of fall in line. You kind of saw it versus Boston Bruins. They eventually, once the first line started to set a tone, then it was, I think, the fourth line at that time. Pat was playing on the fourth line still, but then they started to kind of follow suit and then took over in this middle of the first period and then finally started to help. So I think they're a little too reliant on what that first line does, but it comes down to what Cooper does right before the game. And with Cirelli coming back too, I noticed them trying to figure out, is he going to play on the second line, first line, third line, that as well, because Brandon Hagel became the team's ultimate forechecker. So a lot of those little things, I think, is what helps them set their tone and structure, because as of late, the forechecking hasn't been as strong, but the giveaways haven't been as deadly either. So they're not taking away a bunch of pucks, but they're also not giving it away anymore. So there's just been little things that I think have readjusted their tones. I think they do well playing up to some of their competitors, though. The one game that left a bad taste in their mouth was weeks ago versus Detroit, and I think Detroit still kind of has their number. But other than that, I think they've played pretty well. Their problem most of the season has been letting up in the second period, not so much a slow start. Second period is where they've really gutted their structure most of the games this season.
Yeah, and I think the team knows that. And there was a couple of interesting things from that Rangers game. You had Stammer go up on that top line with Cooch and with Point. And Stammer's comments after the game was that they just felt comfortable still again because they played so much in the last couple of years together that it really didn't break anything in the momentum with them, and that they felt that that was something that needed and was the spark. The other thing was the interview that they had with Vasi asking if going against Igor was any different, and Vasi plainly stated, no, it's just another goalie. And then he backs it up by going, a good goalie, but it's just another goalie. He does nothing different. He doesn't care, because that was something I had always wondered too. I had wondered if you going against a fellow, Russian and Sheskirkin, who last year won the Vezina, and, Vasi won the year before. Is that something where you say, okay, this is a game I got to? And that was, we thought with Vasi going in the Montreal game, was it going to be Moose in the second game? And I think everybody automatically said that's probably going to be a loss, because as much as good as Moose is, he's going to give up at least 2 to 3 goals. And to the Rangers, that could be detrimental and not good for hockey for your wins. So, and then when they saw Vasi come out on the second night, it was like, oh, we're going to do this. And to me, it was like Vasi wanted to go against Igor. But
yeah, I think he was playing it coy, honestly.
Yeah.
So coy. I guarantee he gets up for that matchup.
Yep.
I guarantee. Especially right now, after I guarantee he gets up for that matchup without a doubt. I thought it was kind of interesting too. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying, anytime that Vasi's not on the topic of top goalie in the league, his team backs him up so heavily about it, like it's the ultimate disrespect. So, and if you just look at Vasi's mental routine heading into a game, practices, weeks, breaks, any of that, he's so meticulous about how he manages himself, because he holds himself to such a high standard. So when you're at that level of a competitor, you're not thinking about it. And of course, I think the whole, Russian thing, young guy and Shesterkin, Shesterkin's been compared to being the next Vasi in so many ways. And I think Vasi has a chip on his shoulder to be like, actually, I'm still here. I'm not dead. And I'm still putting up the numbers.
Yeah.
Well, that's here. Monkey Cult Coffee, one of our sponsors here, put in there, love the Vasi's better chant, because we heard last year in New York where they started chanting Igor's better. And why we have Monkey Cult here, they are giving away 10% for any of our listeners at monkeycultcoffee.com. If you just put in gold 10, you get 10% off your order until midnight tonight. So thanks to Matt for Monkey Cult Coffee. Of course, Donation for every bag sold also goes to the National Pediatric Cancer Foundation. So go get your go get your coffee. It's really good. He just gave me a bag today.
I'll look at you.
Prepared.
Yeah.
Bourbon chocolate chip.
That sounds delicious though.
Oh,
yeah. I was only gonna order offline, but I got to go buy Sunshine tomorrow or probably Wednesday, and I got my cold brew pitcher in the mail today, so I'll be going to get mine this week because I've had it and it's definitely like perfect for a cold brew. So I'm excited. So don't forget to use that monkeycoldcoffee.com, goal 10 for 10% off. The promo code there, your purchases at the website. They got all kinds of awesome merch. They've got a cold brew coffee pitcher themselves. I just wanted a bigger one because I drink a lot of it. So
anything you order over $75, anything it orders over $75 gets free shipping. So there was one of my friends after that Rangers game ran into Stammer and had a little talk with him about that Rangers game. And he said, she told him, "I'm so glad we beat the Rangers. Their fans were talking trash in my store yesterday when they saw our Lightning gear." His reply was, "Guess they didn't learn from last year."
Stanford's really good with the one-liners. He lands him in there so smoothly. Like when you think he's just gonna play it cool, he just nails it right there.
He's got like that perfect sweet spot right now between like kind of like still smarmy, like 20 something, and then dad joke, you know what I mean? Like dad timing. So like he's like right in that perfect like golden zone.
What a cheat.
I never had that. My puns are always terrible. They never land. But I'm quite famous for it, in fact. And that's funny because we have our little group chat, and Shooter unfortunately is out of town this week, but he played on the Pucks of what is it? Dreams, Pucks of Dreams. I always forget what
Puck of Dreams. Rink of Dreams.
Rink of Dreams. Him and our buddy Jeff, who has been on some of our shows in the past. I think he was our very first guest ever when Shooter and I first did our first podcast like 7 years ago or whatever. But they were both playing for that before the Rangers game, and I was going to go down there, but it was just last week of Christmas break. My son was, I couldn't make it down. And it was also a New York game. And I just, whether it's the Yankees or whether it's the Rangers, I just don't have good experiences with fans down there. So I just thought to go. And like 5 minutes into the game, Shooter's texting us in the message. He's like, "Yep, it's a good thing that Phil isn't here because he would have already been escorted out." And I'm like, I had to take myself out from the Boston game a few weeks ago because
I'm still hearing about it because they were in my seats.
I know. You got to tell them that. Hey, tell them that I took myself out and that I knew that I apologized, and I was like, hey, I don't usually let them get to me, but that game, there was a family right behind us, and like you could tell that they lived here, but they were like, oh, we're gonna go for, and it was just, anyways. So I ended up going up the stairs, and then the usher, and you could tell they had extra ushers for that game that I had never seen before, and I was like, they had
extra ushers for stash.
No.
They must have seen you coming in and just
they saw how tall he was and said, I ain't doing this by myself. So they went and got extra. Because every single game now since that game, there's been people that are back in my section that I hadn't seen since that game. And like, so the final ones was the little old couple that sits next to me. I finally got to see them at the New Year's Eve game, and they were the last ones. And I'm like, sorry. And then and I gave Shooter and Stash my tickets for that game. And then for this Rangers game, I sold my tickets, and apparently it was a Rangers fan, and they were real nasty. And then they ended up apologizing and then lost. So it was even better for that.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to get to. Cause Shooter was saying the fans were like really bad and running their mouths early on. And then the longer the game went, the quieter they got. And then when they lost, they were leaving. And then there was another fan in one of the group chats that was saying that Rangers fans were like talking shit on the way. I was saying that Tampa fans had no class. And it's like, I guess that they forgot about the guy that was sucker punching dudes up in New York last year in the playoffs, right? Like, talking about no class. Then you're like, let's talk about New York Rangers fans. They're probably like top 3 least classy fans in the league. So it's always nice to send them home
all the time in the stands either. Like, you've got teams where every game there's going to be at least 5 fights. Yeah. We know the Flyers are one of them. Boston's one of them.
Buffalo.
It's always their fans starting it too when they come here.
Yeah.
It's never like Tampa fan starting it. It's always Boston fan or New York fan running their mouths. And it's like, I don't mind if you come here to cheer your team on in my barn. That's fine. We get it. And I always say, I'll take your money any day of the week. Absolutely. Especially if you flew in here, I'll take your money. But if you're going to sit here and start trying to act like we aren't the undefeated in the Eastern Conference playoffs for 3 seasons in a row, then that's where I draw the line with your disrespect. So, that's why I can't really go because those games.
We got to get you your own club seating just so you can just be left alone.
Hey, I was.
If we could put them in a pod, it would be great.
I was in the Heritage Suite for SmackDown on Friday, and I was like, I got hold of the guy and I was like, look, if you have playoff tickets, let me know before anybody else, because that's where I need to be for like playoffs. It's like I could just stand in the back right between like the snack bar and it's like, yes, exactly. It's perfect.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So that was a Rangers game. And then we had another game last week as well. On New Year's Eve.
Coyotes.
That was the Coyotes, who everyone has been a little bit worried about, and rightly so, because they've been playing really well against the top teams, but mostly at home. Their road record is atrocious. They are great at Mullet Arena. Obviously, it's obvious why it's called Mullet Arena. How do you lose when your home arena is named Mullet Arena and you're playing in front of like high school crowds? But
in a fish pond.
Yeah, on a fish pond. But I've got to say it's a fun experience there. And like I said, they've been successful there, especially against the top teams, Vegas, Toronto, Boston, but like Buffalo, they had beat a lot of these teams. And we came in and right away, Lightning weren't looking super sharp, a couple of fluky plays, and they go up 2-0 pretty quickly in that game. Yeah. And after that, it was pretty much all Lightning.
Yeah, well, finally they took control in the second period there. And it wasn't one of those periods where they kind of catch up and they're still going back and forth. I think that they completely took the reins here with not allowing, the Coyotes to get they got 1 goal that game. No, yeah, 1. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, but only allowing them to get 1 on the board. What I appreciate, though, and what I think has helped this team a lot, whether they are playing catch-up in the second period or controlling the second period better, it's because defense is getting a lot more involved. Defense was kind of still trying to find their footing. They were a bit of a relic in the beginning of the season, and now you can actually count on these guys. A big one is Kaylee and I got to talk to Brian Bradley the other week, and it was interesting because Bradley kind of called on Hedman, was like, not in a negative way, but he was just kind of like, by this point of the season, you should be hearing his name a lot more, seeing a lot more production out of him, and not much is going on. And of course, Kaylee and I agreed. We weren't sure if it was because he got a little banged up on the West Coast tour, and obviously Victor Hedman's the kind of guy who wants to play. He's a massive leader on the ice, but whether he was still dinged up or not, you're finally starting to see him get back into his role. His time on ice is starting to go back to normal, and you're starting to see him in the assist column. I think he's 9 away from 500 assists career-wise. So that's helping this team a lot more. Not worrying about defense behind them is helping them get closer to playing 3 periods of hockey. I don't think we've still seen it quite yet, or you at least want to see it against a quality team at first. But when it comes to the Coyotes, go ahead.
Hedman tied Vinny Lecavalier on the assist for, I think, 3rd place in that game. But the funny part is that you brought up the defense, though, and they're getting better. But actually, 2 of those Yotes goals was because of the defense. It was a bad giveaway by Bogosian and a bad giveaway by Sergachev. Both led to Yotes goals on there. Yeah.
Sergachev. I mean, he comes back and gets the goal, on a nice play instinctively, while using his offense instinctively the way he needs to, shooting from the places we like to see him shoot from. But yeah, it's almost the same thing. It's always the backhand coming off the wall, and it's funny. My wife and I were watching the game, and she's like, "There's certain things that like I need to get like you like a pillow or something that just says just skate with the puck," because I don't think I say anything more while I'm watching the Lightning team this year than, dude, just skate with the puck, because sometimes they make these passes in these zones that if they had just skated with the puck another 5 or 10 feet or just 15 feet, you see maybe skate through some contact, you're gonna have the safe play to actually get out of the zone, make a change, or create an opportunity in the offensive zone. And especially through the neutral zone, I think that's when the Lightning get bogged down and it's hard for them to play their game, is whenever they're trying to pass through the neutral zone. They need to skate through the zone, and that's when they're playing their best. So it was just another bad pass along the near boards there from a backhand pass from Sergachev that led to that goal, that second one there. But
bouncing back, his touches have been a little off, but he takes accountability for it.
Yeah.
I think it's more so what you said there about the neutral zone. When this team's not commanding the neutral zone is when they're chasing the game. So that's kind of been the tale of a lot of these games. And like I know because Coach Cooper will take that to practice the next day, and they'll work on neutral zone plays over and over and over again. So I don't harp on the fact that there were some turnovers by defense too, as you mentioned there, Schooley. But for the most part, their success has started when the blue line is keeping pucks forward and they're getting more involved. And it's not just Victor Hedman. I mean,
well, and going back to him real quick, I was going to say, this is one of the things I was watching him as well, is he hasn't been as physical in the corners where he normally is. And he's always been more of a sticky defenseman. He's always used his body position and his stick and his reach to be the elite defender he is. But when he's just a little bit physical, especially down below the goal line, that's whenever he's his best, especially in his own zone and causing those turnovers or maintaining possession, coming around the back behind the the goalie. And he's been kind of soft, I think, the last however long, and it's been noticeable. And I think the last couple of games, to your point, he has been more effective. And specifically, you saw a little bit coming in that New York game, but definitely in Arizona, there was multiple times where he made the plays down below the goal line and was very instrumental in getting the puck out of their zone, through the neutral zone, and into the offensive zone to create chances. And you're right. The thing for me, though, is the penalties. You still see Ian Cole taking penalties, and you see Nick Perbix still taking some penalties here and there. And those are the things I think if the defense cleans up, I think you're absolutely right. They've created a much better fun foundation for this team playing forward with those guys in their own zone at the blue line.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Casey.
Go ahead. I'm like, it's also the readjustment too, because when you've got guys like Victor Hedman, who's so unorthodox, and when you've got maybe 2 or 3 offensive defensemen, and then you have your real standard defensive defensemen, they don't have that structure so much anymore. You can see Perbix is a confident guy who can play up. Chernak used to be that only really stay-at-home defenseman, but him being paired with McDonough was chef's kiss. So now they don't really have that. I think there's a lot of miscommunication in terms of staying back and playing up and when to do it, because that's where gaps are created. This team has suffered from creating a lot of gaps and giving good teams time and space, or not even always good teams, just certain teams time and space. Their giveaway total has been detrimental. So looking at this game, I give defense a lot of credit just because the gaps were minimized, the giveaways were minimized, and a lot of that started with them versus, your top 4 lines or your 4 lines, not top 4.
Yeah. And I think the pairings still aren't set. You saw Coop go back to the old Sergachev and Hetty combo, and actually I like the Sergachev and Perbix combo myself better. They seem to really be learning off of each other, and I think the cementing of the blue line has really came down to the addition of Perbix. And we saw that rewarded today with what, Stash?
Oh, we got a 2-year extension, $1.25 million.
Yeah,
right?
Literally, he got the phone call. I saw the interview. He got the phone call last week saying, find a house. And when he got told to find a house, he called his agent and said, is this true? And the agent said, it looks to be true. So go ahead and find your house. And so they finally got the deal done, and Perbix is now a Bolt for the next 2 years. He is an unrestricted free agent after that, unless they sign him. But of course, they usually do that little bridge deal that they before the big ones. And I think this means Foot could be trade bait now. You know, they're gonna have to clear some cap room going into when Balcers comes off of LTIR. So this might be some trade bait for Foot, or maybe Ian Cole to bring Foot in, because Cole, I don't think, or even Fleury, or even a combo of them. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here before the trade deadline.
I think he stays. He's been putting up numbers in the past 2 weeks and kind of adding to the assist tally, something that nobody was expecting him to do per se. If anyone's on the chopping block, I agree with you. It's Foot. Footy just kind of has struggled all season long to be consistent, and a lot of takeaways earlier in the season were coming off his stick. And then Fleury started to find his way, but the holidays is kind of a hard tell. And those last 2 games that they lost on the road weren't a good look for him. But Fleury, right before those losses, he started to look like he was gelling back there. So if anyone's going first, I think it might be Footer.
Yeah. I think Foot goes first.
And Foot's got a decent, a favorable hit right now, and he's an RFA next season, so you still have control if you want to trade him. I mean, really, basically, you're clearing a little bit of space and probably looking to get some more picks back from the Hagel acquisition and things that they've done. Cole still got he's got a $3 million hit right now, so I just don't know what's going on with other teams if they'd be looking for his services at that number, especially that's someone I think the Lightning brought in intentionally for certain reasons, especially when it comes to the playoffs and the experience that he has. You see in the chat, Serena was mentioning that, or Stephanie was talking about how Hedman not having that concept partner like Ruda, you knew no matter what, that's what it was going to be. And then you had Cernak and McDonough, no matter what, those top four were, locked in stone. And then it was the bottom three that were the rotation and figuring out who was going to play night to night and what that pairing was going to be. And now you're definitely seeing all six of those, or all three of those pairings, all six of those guys, seven of those guys, depending on how they dress. You're not really sure night to night who's going to be those pairings yet. I agree. I think the Sergachev and Perbix, I think as you get closer to the playoffs, when we get into the playoffs, I think that's going to be your pairing. And it really depends on what they want to do with Hedman and how they want to pair him and with his offense, and how much they want him to stay home or how much they want him to be involved. Because he plays both ways. If he needs to be the stay-at-home guy, he can be. And I think that's kind of what Stephanie is talking about as well, because he does, I feel, trying to be overly responsible in the defensive zone sometimes. So he's not playing his natural game. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, where that pairing goes. And we've seen Bogosian get scratched here and there lately too. And I think maybe it's partly, maintenance, partly just trying to get the other guy's foot some time on the ice, and it's kind of Bogosian's odd man out because he can come right back in, and it's not a big deal for him to miss games. So he doesn't, he's got a clause. He's only $850. There's not really, you're not getting a lot back for him if you're trying to move him. So I don't think that there's a lot of anyone that says, oh, he might be getting moved. I don't think that's why he's getting scratched. Personally, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. If you're trying to cement what your rotation is going to be, it does make sense, I think, because we tried to see Cal Foot, we what he can do, and he hasn't quite panned out. And we've seen Lightning do that with players in the past that they've given him 2 or 3 chances, and if you don't really make it, but you still have opportunity and maybe some potential to bring something back, we've seen the Lightning go ahead and move on quicker than maybe some other teams might. So
and I also feel like between Footer's age and what his potential career could be in this league, it's better to release him now, let him find his in the right system rather than kind of trying to still figure something out here. And they really need somebody who's going to allow Victor Hedman to kind of like a let it rip situation. Hetty's always paired with the new guy or the young guy. He's always, father time on the ice. He's because he's so versatile, but it also doesn't allow him to play within his game and his element. So I feel like he's also been restricted this season because of all the changes, especially back there in defense. So it's crucial that they find the pairing for him so that we can finally see Victor Hedman do what he needs to do.
It's amazing.
I think it's going to be Ian Cole. Honestly, if you really look at it and the way that these pairings shake out, I think we love to see Bogosian, we love to see Perbix and Sergachev, and I really think it's like the writing's on the wall with that pairing. And I think Cernak and Bogosian kind of, to me, give me that McDonough Cernak vibe that we kind of had last year and the year before that with those two guys. So I think it just kind of naturally, as we go this next month or so, we're probably going to, I would think that we're probably see Ian Cole end up being if it's just a matter of the minutes, if he can handle still going and taking those minutes. And I think he still has it. I think he still has the legs to go out there and put the minutes up there on the top line with Hedman. So yeah, and it's good. It's good to have these conversations when you have guys like Cernak, Hedman, Sergachev, and a surprise like Perbix to say, okay, well, now we are going to have to maybe move on from a guy with foot that has that kind of potential that still hasn't seen 600 games yet and hasn't really hit his stride. So only at 24. So not the worst things to have in the world as we're trying. And if you look at the standings, especially in our division, things have really opened up for the Lightning. So it's just staying the course, not having those extended losing streaks, and you get the ability to kind of tinker a little bit and work out these matchups and these pairings that you have.
Yeah.
Sorry, just to talk about that Monday Night Football thing and last time, hopefully. He has no pulse. He has a pulse, but is not breathing on his own. He's requiring defibrillator, and he's headed to UC Medical Center, but it looks like they're going to cancel tonight's game. It is postponed right now, but the calls are saying to cancel the game, and they've gotten his mother to the ambulance. It doesn't look like he's going to end up making it. So there's the update on that Monday Night Football game. So
is that from a hit?
It was from a hit. Then he went down and never got back up. Okay. So it was off of a tackle.
Yeah.
So he made the tackle, or the other Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Man.
Yeah. So it doesn't look like he's gonna make it, and they said if that's one of the best medical facilities around, and if anybody can do it, it's gonna be him. So
yeah, they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So sorry for the downside. I just want to give an update to the people that are on here. That's what the breaking news is coming. They're still right now. Everybody's saying it's still postponed, but it seems like it's gonna. Everybody's calling for it to be canceled. I can't see how the NFL's gonna say
no to that.
Yeah.
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 I wonder.
Magnitude situation.
So I know if it happened with a hockey player, I mean, we've had some where they went off, but basically if they died there on the ice, I think that game would end up being canceled also. So,
yeah.
So let's get back to talking hockey though.
Yeah. Well, prayers and, hey, I mean, that's the one thing I'll say is that in all these sports, people, take it very seriously sometimes, but we need to understand that it's just a game, but it is a dangerous game and it's a violent game in all these sports. It's just one play, one bad line drive, or a hit in the baseball, or
we saw the game earlier with Evander Kane this year against us where we cut him, and how
if he hadn't reacted so quickly, who knows?
Right, and how that bench was going crazy and everything else. Because you got to remember. Yes, it's a game, but those guys are family. I mean, we hear it constantly, when Stammer was in the bubble and left the bubble because of the miscarriage of his child, the whole team was rallied behind him. And so He came back in, scored that, and then left again. So it's just
and all the buzz about the salary cap, this and that. No one ever made a single outcry about him leaving and coming back, knowing what it was, and that to me just shows, the camaraderie and the understanding that they have amongst them. It is like a brotherhood, and I know Tom Brady got beat to hell for saying like it was like going a road game was like being on deployment in the military. But I will say the brotherhood that you have, or sisterhood that you have from playing these sports together, is real, and it doesn't matter. It transcends the logo on your chest or whatever, on your helmet or whatever. You do have that camaraderie, that brotherhood or sisterhood, that you're all in battle together, or you're all warriors together, and you're all in this team sport for a reason.
Well, even with the interview with Hetty, because the one thing we didn't talk about in that Yotes game is Stammer getting 498. And
I was getting there.
And the interview with Hetty, they asked him, and Hetty right away said he's at 498. The team knows where he's at. The team wants to give him that goal. So that they want
a little too much early on in those games.
Yes, they
Montreal.
feeding him.
We didn't talk about that early in that Montreal game. It was like if Stammer was on the ice, they were like, "Give him the puck," and finally they calmed down with it.
You know what's funny though, because this another similarity though was Ovechkin. Ovechkin didn't really want the goal that extended past Howie to be an empty netter. But in terms of camaraderie and just the respect in this game too, I mean, every fan, no matter what jersey they were wearing, went nuts because of what Ovechkin did there. And you're crazy if you think he's retiring in the next 2 years. So sky's really the limit for him to get up there with Gretzky, and it's everybody's cheering for everyone's milestone across the league, regardless if you hate the jersey they're in. And I think it's beautiful. And I think he's sensitive about the Brady thing. I mean, these guys have to be on the road. Their schedules are hectic. So, your teammates end up being your family a lot of the times, and the turmoil that these people go through because they're choosing, this lifestyle and this sport. Take it from a military brat. There are a lot of similarities just being on the media side of it. That's exhausting. This is the first holiday I got to be with my family for more than 27 hours. And it's because the Bolts were away and the Bucks were away. If these guys were in town, I was popping in saying Merry Christmas and going home. So there's, your colleagues become your family, and they're the ones lifting you up in so many tough moments, and that's military. And you go to war for them. When a guy's in a contract year, you play your ass off so that you can make sure that he gets his money to support his family, to do what he needs to do. So they're constantly thinking long term about the guy to the left and the right of them. So
we heard that when we did the interview with Nigel, and he talked about Stammer's 60-goal season, how Winnipeg was booing him last game of the season, trying to go for number 60, was booing him and booing him and booing him. He scores number 60, and they give him a standing ovation and cheer, one of the loudest cheers he's heard in an opposing stadium. So that's how it is, and that's how hockey fans are. Just like, we had the 1,000 points scored here on our home ice, and
nothing from Boston. Boston could suck it, dude. Nothing pissed me off more than that happening.
I was like, was Stash at that game? Does Boston fans count?
That's the game I left.
Yes, that is.
That's the game that I left. Yes.
No.
I left like 10 minutes into that. Well, no, we got there late. So we got there because I was waiting for Shooter. So we met up, and I got there late. Well, I got there early because I didn't realize it was also a World Cup game. So it was USA World Cup game. I ran into the Smack Apparel guys at Yeoman's. And so I started hanging out, drinking beers there. And then I went to Gen X because we were going to talk to them about maybe doing a meetup or a watch party or something there, and then ran into some people. So like I'd already had 2 stops by the time Shooter got downtown. And when we got to the stadium, I was like, we were already down, I think, when we got to our seats, and then they scored again. And I was just like, at that point, I think we left. It was like early second period. And I was like, we're out of here. I was out. So we watched the rest of the game from Gen X because
I still have never been there. I've got to make my way there.
Oh man, listen, I don't put anybody's age out there, but for me, it's like home. It's definitely pretty cool.
I would enjoy it. I've heard great things. I just I don't know. My friends vary from 30 to like 24, so there's a huge debate there.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and then and that's the and I was gonna say the thing about Ovechkin too. I think he's a great example because he's that guy that, especially early in his career, had zero charisma. He was that typical Russian player. Didn't want to talk to me. Didn't really want to have anything to do with it. Was kind of like a dirty guy. Had like the questionable hits. Would start stuff and like kind of skate away sometimes. Like he kind of had that rap to him, and he's been that guy that's aged and just become this, like, to me, a pretty lovable guy, like like, especially
I think he became lovable when they won the Stanley Cup.
I was gonna say we got to see it firsthand. I've talked about this a lot, the transformation of Alex Ovechkin, because he was in our division at that point, and so when he started going and they were coming up short, you could see the way he changed his game. I mean, there was a talk about how selfish his game was and how he wasn't, he would lay the hits, but he wasn't necessarily a two-way player. And he didn't always do the hard things that it took in the offseason and preparation and away from the rink. And, I think that we saw firsthand in that playoff run when they won the cup, the transformation that he went through. And after he won, kind of like a Kucherov, he was able to let his hair down a little bit, and now he's just now that he's got that silver in his hair, it's like Papa Ovi now.
Papa O is a whole different guy.
Yeah, totally, and I love it as much as I love cheering against him and loved hating him in the first half of his career. I've definitely enjoyed watching him go for this record in the twilight. Well, these last few years of his career.
No, I've appreciated it, but the Kucherov comparison, perfect. I mean, we saw a completely different human being once they got to lift that, when Kuch got to lift that first one, and then you still saw he carried a little bit of that with him into the season, but I mean, that feels like you're talking to a whole different human being from what little bit Kuch would give beforehand. So and when you talk to anybody in this locker room, they say that Kucherov is one of the most lovable guys as well. So their teammates are always feeling something way different than what we're feeling and seeing. But it's funny that you mentioned about Ovechkin, because he never came off like a two-way player, and he did seem like he just came to lace up and then go. It didn't seem like there was much chemistry there, even at some moments respect. But I think any guy that lifts the Stanley Cup changes them. So there's certain Avs players that all of a sudden grew a personality after this last raise, and I was just like, oh my gosh,
that's funny.
No idea.
Yeah, but seeing Ovechkin swim with it and sleep with the cup, I think that's when you really got a sense of who he was. And then in these last couple of years, we talked about this, I think, on the last episode, how for every power play, he's on the ice for the whole 2 minutes. You don't see that nowadays. I'd love to see that with a Kuch or a Stammer.
He basically is right now. I'll tell you, Kucherov is on the first and second power play. I don't know if you guys have noticed this lately, but Kuch is on both power plays.
I think he missed all but 5 seconds of it the other night against the Coyotes. Yeah. I think is what I had seen the stat was. He was on for every minute of the power play except for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to see some more of that. Get some more Point, Kucherov, and Stammer in there for the whole 2 minutes, and just play the other two.
They rotated the other two. That's exactly what happened in that Coyotes game, is that they had the top 3 guys on there, and they just rotated the bottom 2 guys. Killer came on there too. So, yeah, I mean, the one thing we can't talk about is special teams, because that PK is insane right now. Like it's one of the most efficient penalty kills, and when you've got guys like Brandon Hagel, and then you have a Cirelli coming back, and you have both of those guys out there at the same time on the pin, you're not going to get anything. I'm sorry, you're not. Those 2 guys have a hound dog mentality when it comes to the puck and playing the puck on the boards. You don't come away with the puck against those guys, especially in the corner. Absolutely
not. Well, for starters, Higgs is leading the NHL in takeaways. And when Cirelli was out, he stepped up tremendously as being one of the best forecheckers on this team. At least that's what I stand by. I kept trying to get Coach Cooper to say it, but he wouldn't say it 100% because he knows it'd be slightly insulting to Anthony Cirelli, who was the best forechecker on the team, before his injury and stuff. And then he came back and just stepped right back into that role, which you don't see that often. Sometimes it takes guys a minute because these injuries are so significant and they play on these injuries for so many games. So the scar tissue and everything else that they're doing, no wonder they need time and, no pressure to get back to their form. Cirelli, it was like he didn't miss a beat. But with that, I agree entirely. Seeing both of those guys on the ice on a PK unit is so dangerous, and they stick to you. They have some of the stickiest coverage on the ice, and they don't force a lot of mistakes in such sticky coverage. Any other guy that tries to play so tight is where you pick up a lot of penalties and stuff. If you look at these guys' penalty minutes, they're not racking up. Barclay Goodrow is a perfect example. Goodrow can play sticky coverage. He ends up in the box so much because he collects some tiny mistakes because of it. So it's a real skill to play so close to somebody and not be sitting in the box half the game. And that's what I love to see about Cirelli playing. But Brendan Hagel, who would have ever thought he'd be this two-way player that just is creating his old mold? Everyone's saying it's because
JBB did.
Yeah.
So smart. He's so smart. And think about what Hagel did when he got here last season. They tried to put him on that third line, they tried to somewhat replace that third line immediately, and they thought Hagel was going to do it. And it's funny because the third line was great at forechecking. They were really defensive minded, but they could put up points here and there. And the role that Heggs is playing now would have fit then, but his game's completely changed. He wasn't made for the third line.
And the funny part is that you saw him with Taves and Kane in Chicago, and that's where they saw this what he could do and had the thought of him being on this line with Point and Cooch, and he's way exceeded what they could have imagined. And he's such a missing piece that we didn't have last year. Even though he was there, he really hadn't put anything into this game. We saw Paul really get in with the playoffs, but Hagel never really made a mark in the playoffs. I don't think he knew his place. I don't think the guys were comfortable. And it seems like, I think me and Stash had talked about this, that they found each other's speed. They know that he can hang with Point. And Kucherov knows that. Kucherov shoots it up to both of them, knowing that they're acting like they shoot out of a cannon. Yeah. And with both of them and I see that with Point and Hagel, they both know that they're going to be side by side with each other because they can skate with each other because they both have that quickness in them. And I think it was a real smart move to get him, and a great move by Coop to recognize that and put him on that line.
Yeah, I think Coop's genius when it comes to those small changes for the lines to figure it out. And I think the biggest difference there too, because I actually got to ask Cooper about it, and a few media members asked me about it recently as well, is, honestly, if there were some guys that were able to remain on this roster, what would Hagel's development have been in terms of the chemistry and the gelling? And he's compared him a lot to Andre Palat. But think of Andre Palat with speed. It made sense. Palat could have gone to any line and been a generator in many ways, but those top two lines is where they pulled him through, and they put him with some of the best players on the roster constantly because he was able to understand, read, relay the puck, do everything that needs to be done so effortlessly. We saw playoff Pally. He was counted out all season long until he dialed it up in playoffs. It's because
but Palat didn't score like Hagel.
No, but that's what I mean by there's a big difference there, because the way Hagel's speed plays a lot into his ability to score and get in those corners. He doesn't go for the typical goal either.
His size is underrated. People say, "Oh, him and Point are twins." They're not twins. Okay, no. He's like 4.5 inches taller than Point. Like he's noticeably bigger than Point, not just in size.
But one other guy on the team with a tattoo. So, that's how I tell them apart.
Well, I mean, they like the facial. Sure, they look like each other, but size-wise, they are like Hagel is deceptively big. I think he's a lot bigger than you think he is, and to me, he really. If there's one guy that I miss the Lightning moving over the last years, it's been JT Miller. We were talking about him before we came on. And I think that was a guy that if we would have maybe moved one or two other people and kept him, we might have been looking at a 3P or a couple of bit sooner. But whatever, it's I don't like to look at the past. Hindsight's 2020. But I think that's one of those guys that and he's been really screwed over since he's been in Vancouver on top of that. But anyways, I think that Hagel reminds me a lot of JT Miller and the fact and the way he plays, and see, like, that's you could just
Honestly,
say,
I wouldn't
like,
have noticed
he's
that
bigger.
until you did that, and I see them
But
in the locker room all
they're
the time.
yeah, but they're
Side
definitely
profile, like you can't blink towards these guys, or you really don't know.
yeah,
who
side no for sure.
Yeah.
And you can tell Hagel is like bending down a little bit there. But yeah, I kind of liken him in his production to a JT Miller, where he kind of does it all, where he's got hands. If he's in tight, he can make a play. If he's on a breakaway, he can finish. If he's on the boards, he's going to maintain possession. He's going to forecheck. He plays
hits
responsibly in the neutral zone, and he plays physically. He's got the size where he's not intimidated. And I'll tell you right now, one thing that reminds me of him, and I don't like talking about Yanni because I think Yanni was what he was when he was here, but Hagel's the first guy to get in there. He's always the first guy to be coming back and face washing the guy or throwing a little knuckles here or there, a glove to the face or whatever. Hagel's right there every time. So the things that he brings, especially to that top line, he brings grit, he brings forechecking, he brings puck possession, he brings speed, he brings skill, he brings finishing. It's all the things that you need to make a line with two guys like Point and Kucherov elite, because you can't just have an average guy on that line. You got to have another elite player on that line. And we've been fortunate that we still have the depth with guys like Killorn and Stamkos and Paul, and now Cirelli's back, that we have the ability to still have an amazing second line as well. So it's really going to be interesting to see what happens. And Colton, I mean, I don't think we could talk about Ross Colton enough, and where he has really found his stride there on that third line. And to me, it's just a matter of whether Coop decides who's going to be that second and third line guy. Is he going to put Stamkos, Killorn, and Cirelli back together eventually for that second line, because we all know what that line can do? Yeah. And then go ahead and see what Paul and Colton could do. And what that is, it going to be maybe a Perry on that third line and Nemestikov down there with Colton and Belmar, and maybe he breaks that up a little bit, so there is a little bit more speed and a little bit more skill on that fourth line, and it's not just necessarily a purely possession line. Maybe there's a little bit extra skill there and depth, spreading the skill there. Personally, I like the school bus line. Personally, I think they know their job, and anytime they're on the ice, the puck is usually in the offensive zone. Maybe it's not getting on the net a lot, but it's usually in the offensive zone, or at least the neutral zone. Very rarely is it in our own defensive zone when that line is on the ice. So
I think I've noticed that this team doesn't, and there's a couple of teams like this in the league, I would say, but this team doesn't particularly need that babysitter on every line. So what I appreciate about it is, the school bus line can be what it is, but Colton needs. I was expecting Colton and Nemestikov to pick up where they left off in preseason. They started to find some chemistry there. I felt like they were starting to feed off of each other, and then it kind of fell off.
Vladdy had that hat trick.
Well, yeah. And a lot of that was credited to Colton. So they were able to play so well with each other and just never came back. But I think it's because that third piece is so crucial. Because Nemestikov actually ends up having to clean up a lot of mistakes on the ice. We haven't heard his name enough because he is cleaning up a lot of mistakes. But
that's a very good point.
To just focus on his game, he does well. He has a lot to offer this team. I would like to see him and Colton back on the same line, and I think they just have to figure out that third guy and let the school bus line be what it is. But this isn't a team that needs a babysitter on everyone. I don't think I would love to see Paul on the third line at all.
I was thinking that for me it was a no-brainer. I mean, clearly I'm not John Cooper, but I thought it was a no-brainer that you just come in and you put Cirelli on that third line with Colton and Nemestikov, and boom. I mean, I give them time. Yes, it's not going to happen overnight, but give them time. And that to me is a scary ass third line on paper. That's a really scary third line, because Colton exceeds on both ends. He's a 200-foot player. He loves to play all areas of the game. He's physical. He's another one of those guys that's right there. He doesn't take shit from anybody. You face wash him, he's going to throw a punch. He's not going to face wash back. He's coming with the right hook. So, and then you put Cirelli on that line, who, again, like we said before, he's like a dog with a bone mentality for the puck. And he has the ability to get to the scoring areas as well and generate scoring chances. the same way as Colton does. And Nemestikov isn't slow. He's as fast as he's ever been.
Yeah.
And Colton isn't a slow skater either, and neither is Cirelli. All three of those guys have the ability for speed and quick burst speeds coming out of the neutral zone, and they all feel like to turn the puck over in that area. So I think if I was going to look another, February going to that part of the season, I would say that would be your roster. That would be your lines. That would be the top six that we saw to start the season. We slot Cirelli in that third line, and we have the school bus line as the fourth line. And I think that's probably what we're going to see going into the playoffs.
And remember, Names
if
looks
I had
young.
a crystal ball, that would be my prognostication.
Names looks young, but he's just as big a veteran as some of these other guys. I mean, and traveled well. I mean, Rangers and Detroit and back to Tampa. Yeah, I mean, so he's traveled very well. So
he's got that Andre Waugh gene that he just or the Ruslan gene. He's just
the Ruslan Fedotenko where he doesn't get old.
He just doesn't age.
He doesn't get old. Yeah. No, I loved him over at Dallas. I was excited when they brought him back, and I think too, because you said time, and I think time is really crucial here because I think Ross Colton kind of has a unique rhythm that people don't notice either. And what's often talked about with Colton is his heavy shot. When you have a heavy shot, you have to be placed you have to be set up well and have great placement on the ice for that to land. And I don't think Colton's really being set up that much. It's great when you see him get a chance to rip a shot. Not that these guys get a split second to be in their comfort zone, but with a heavy shot, you don't have many zones, throughout the ice that feel like a sweet spot for you. So I also think that giving him a little bit more time, especially with Nemestikov and then Cirelli coming back into the mix, that could be something where they finally get a feel for Colton enough to help set him up as well as vice versa. Colton knows how to set up Nemestikov, but Nemestikov's not a selfish player. He's very unselfish. I mean, I can't say enough. If you just take a game to watch what he does, he's such a workhorse.
Yeah, he's very much Andre Palat to me, especially the way he's come back now. He's got that same style of play.
He's the fastest skater in half these games. If you go back and look statistically, top speed, Nemestikov. Nemestikov.
We come into those in the preseason projecting him to be on the top line instead of Hagel. We really thought that it was going to be Nemestikov up there with Point and Kucherov. And Cooper in his infinite genius. I was like, no, it's the bag man at the top line. We're going with Bagel.
Let's look ahead to next.
Let's look ahead to next week. We're already here. We're an hour now. So we'll look ahead. We'll get some. We still got the game. And these games are on the road, right? We're gonna get a little mini road trip here to start the new year.
We got 3 away.
Yep.
Yeah, three away.
The 3rd and the 4th starting tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday. We are at Chicago, 8:30.
This is an important one with Chicago. Stephanie had commented on this earlier. They need to be careful with the Hawks only winning 8 games all season. We have a tendency to play down with our competition.
Not that far down.
No, well, but
far.
I do expect Moose to be in net tomorrow night.
Yes.
Play down that just desperate teams tend to edge them out sometimes. I don't think they play down. They just kind of get edged out by desperate teams.
And again, in this time of the season, I just chalk that up to the fact that the Lightning know what it takes to get to the playoffs, and that's all that really matters. And that I'm not saying that it's okay to take a game off, but you have to have a tank that lasts all season long, and you're not trying to empty the tank in a November game against Detroit. I'm sorry. Everyone's going to sit here or December, And
now you guys said that, and that was a question that I had been seeing from a couple different teams. I kind of touched on this with Stash before we went live. I've seen Seattle and a couple other teams saying that they are playing every game now like it's a must-win game. Do you think that's all around the league, or just those bottom teams that are hovering on that wild card spot?
Seattle has to. Okay,
right.
If you look at the West and where they're at in the wild cards and the standing over there, they're gonna be fighting Colorado and Edmonton for wild card spots, basically, in Minnesota. Like those are the three other teams that are fighting for those bottom four spots. And Seattle started great and hasn't been playing great lately. So yes, they have to.
I think it's more of a West thing. I think it's more the West teams.
Well, I was going to bring that, except for now it seems like Detroit and Buffalo as well, who started off once again. Buffalo started off at a torrid pace, as we've seen how many times, and now they have fallen flat on their face. And the East is pretty stacked, and I don't feel like you're going to see a wild card team come out of the Atlantic, and that's not good news if you're a Panthers fan.
That one landed very well.
Oh, it's hilarious. I'm sorry.
You finally had a funny.
Oh, it's not good news because as of right now, they are. Yeah, I can't. Well, I think that's a dated phrase. I can't say anymore. Something my grandpa would have said. Usually, like if it's something my grandpa would have said, I just can't say that anymore.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. But they're way back on the in the chow line. I guess that's how I would say it. They're far back in the chow line right now.
I was trying to see how that would translate, but I shouldn't.
Yeah. Anyways, we're from the farm. We're farmers. So, anyways,
no one's judging. No one's judging.
So, anyways, yeah. So, like, I do think that there are some teams that have to be playing that way. Mm-hmm. I still think if you look at, the Islanders and the Rangers and the Penguins, all three of those teams probably need to be playing.
Islanders for sure.
Yeah. I mean, talk about a collapse in the last two seasons, from back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals to not making the playoffs to now again on the outside looking in. Yeah.
And good goaltending. I mean, yes, we really don't know what's going on over there.
Well, and the Penguins today during the Winter Classic had Jari go down. And who knows if that's just a cramp, if they're going to lose him for a while. I don't know how long they're going to keep their head above water.
But they're just offensively strong. I was surprised that they did decent today when it came to defense. Or I won't insult them by saying decent. It's the Boston Bruins they were able to manage. But still, they're trying to figure out their deep pairings, and their defense is barely showing up for them. But what's helping them is the fact that they sit, I think, like top 5 or 6 in the league for goals against. I gotta double check that. They've been
they're up there. 111 against. I mean, they're up there. So I mean, they're doing well, and I mean, their goal differential is pretty solid as well. So they're outscoring their defense, their bad defense. The thing for me is that I just don't trust. What Coop talks about this a lot, right? Extended losing streaks. Mm-hmm. The Lightning have lost no more than 2 games in a row all season long. Period. Their longest losing streak, 2 games, 3 times. They've lost 2 games in a row. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's it. Every other time they've lost 1 game and then come back and win the next game. So that's the recipe when they talk about it around here of making the playoffs. No extended losing streaks.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's already had multiple losing streaks. They've had multiple winning streaks. I just don't rely on streaky teams to really finish whenever it comes down to the playoff crunch. And you've got teams like the Rangers and the Islanders, again, who are, who knows what they are, but I know what the one thing they are is hungry and embarrassed. Yeah. So they have something to prove. And the Penguins, I think, are just like kind of that, what is that? The glory tour or the last hurrah, or what, you know what I mean? Like, we got the band back together for one, and it's the opposite of what Boston is doing. Boston's like, we got the band back together for one last. Okay, well, we're here to chew bubble gum and win hockey games, and we're all out of bubble gum, right? Yeah, especially at home. So, which I'm still not that afraid of them in the playoffs, but that's chat for a couple months down the road. But you see that team is going to be desperate. And then who knows what Florida is going to do, honestly. Florida can get streaky. Florida has a talent. Florida has all the pieces there.
No plan.
No plan. Exactly.
They got their god.
Well, no, I don't know. I don't know what they did.
Price came in high because I wouldn't even guess that they would have had the kind of season that they're having.
So tomorrow in Chicago, back-to-back games, Wednesday in Minnesota. I think that Moose starts in Chicago and Vasi in Minnesota. Looks like Casey agrees on that one. Stash, you agree on that one?
Yeah, for sure.
And then Winnipeg.
That's the game I'm looking out for, personally.
Me too. Coach Rick Bowness has gotten that team really doing good this year.
We don't play well against our former coaches.
Nope.
No.
Let's talk about that. We don't do that. Let's not talk about playing down to competition. I'm not really that worried about Chicago. I'm worried about playing against Rick Bowness with that Winnipeg team, which, by the way, unsponsored plug for, once again, ESPN Plus, everyone out there that talks shit about being able to watch games, blah, blah, blah. Well, I watch a lot of hockey, and I was able to watch Winnipeg and Edmonton the other night, and that Winnipeg team is good. They are good. They shut down McJesus. They shut down that top line, and they've got guys out there that are playing good hockey, and that's the game that I'm, especially on a road trip this time of year going into Winnipeg. That's the game that I'm a little bit worried about as far as like if we're gonna win them. I'm not, I'm not saying it's a telling game by any means. If we lose that game, we lose that game. Weirdly, but that's a matchup that I'm always worried about is going into Winnipeg, because I think that's one of the most underrated Western Conference teams right now, and that's another team that I don't want to play in the playoffs if I'm a Western Conference team. Not really. They have something to prove too after their collapse.
The two names that stand out to me the most are Connor and DeMello on that one. Whenever you've got a key defensive guy, I mean, crap, that could be dangerous, especially if you're feeling any kind of road fatigue or letting off the gas a little bit after the victories. The good thing is it doesn't take much for this team to have a momentum swing. You just never know what that momentum swing is going to be. But with a solid D guy like DeMello, they got to stay out of the penalty box. They started to clean it up a little bit, but if you go into Winnipeg racking up penalties, it's going to be a nasty game.
Yeah.
And don't want to
that's still the bugaboo of this Lightning team. They still have those sloppy games where they're still racking up a little bit too many penalties. Their PK has been fantastic, but that's only going to last so long. And you can only live by the sword for so long until you end up cutting yourself, And
we talked about Chicago and Winnipeg, but we don't want to skip past Minnesota. As Stephanie pointed out here, 10-16-1 against them. They're a fast team. They always skate fast against us.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
And just remember,
they've got muscle now. So teams that are equally as physical or can, raise the physicality as well as be quick on you, those are those teams that put the bolts outside of their structure quite often and make it impossible for them to have a fast start or get their structure until the third period. It's always those fast teams that force them to not pick themselves together up until the third period.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think the book is out on the Bolts. If you don't give them time and space, especially early on in the game, it takes them a little while to find their feet and their footing. And
I was just about to say, I think
Boston,
in a one-game series we lose that, but when we get to the playoffs and they can't do a 7-game series, the Lightning always adjust to that.
Right.
In those one games we saw last year with Florida. They were kind of nasty towards us during the regular season and really got us. And then look at playoffs. Just a reminder, these are West Coast teams. So the games are 8:30 against Chicago, 9:30 against Minnesota, and then 8 o'clock against Winnipeg. So I'm sure several of you guys will be posting on Thunderbolts what time's the game. But just so you know, they're 8:30, 9:30, and 8 o'clock respectfully, because it is on the West Coast.
Okay, at least it's not 10. Like that first West Coast tour killed me. I mean, I feel like I had to take a power nap before waking all the way up to watch these.
Well, we did a live chat during one of them. I think after the second intermission, we all went to bed. We turned it off and we said, You know what? I think we were losing bad during that game, and we were like, you know what? We're turning this off.
Yeah. No, Kaylee and I did a post game, and we typically do it the next morning, but we did it that night. I don't know if we were just feeling like
games are so brutal.
I don't know what was happening, but 1 o'clock in the morning, we're like, we think this happened, and it was a gripey game. So yeah, at least it's not 10. I'll take 8:30.
Yeah, that's a big reason why we went to Mondays this year. It's kind of hurt our like live viewerships a little bit, not being post game, but Tuesdays sometimes it's brutal, especially on those West Coast, and they start at 8:30, 9, 10 o'clock, and like, oh, we have a post game, and a lot of times we would do pregame shows. If it was like a 10 o'clock show or a 10 o'clock game, we would do a pregame show instead of a post game. So you're welcome. You can take that with you. Don't worry about that one's for free. Any future consulting, shoot her in the stash. We do that on the side. No,
yeah,
but
10% off my next coffee.
But so be prepared, fans, for a lot of away games coming up. We do have 2 home games next week, which by the way, if you don't have tickets yet, you can always go to SeatGeek and use code WTTPod. Get 10% off if your first purchase there for any tickets you need. And like I said, if you want to go to that Columbus game or Vancouver, JT Miller coming back down, you can go ahead and do that. But yeah, we're looking at, after those 2 home games, we've got then 6 games on the road.
25 of our leftover games are on the road.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that's a lot. And
25 of 40
for a team that's been thriving on our home play. So it's they aren't terrible on the road, but they definitely are much better at home. So it's a matter, and I think this is when you're going to start seeing those lines really gel too, because you don't really want to start trying to tweak stuff when you're on the road for an extended road streak. You're not really practicing, you're just kind of showing up, doing warm-ups, maybe doing some film, whatnot, a little bit before game, but you're not really doing practicing. You're not really trying new stuff when we're on these extended road streaks, road trips. So we'll probably see some of these lines really fall into form here, as we were talking about before.
Yeah, and Brandon Hagel and Nick Paul have mentioned that when they get time on the road together, it shifts gears for these guys, because obviously they get to bond more, spend more time with each other. Those dinners are so important. So when they're home, their focus is family, rink family, but on the road, it's just them a lot more. So I feel like that would be so crucial for the lines that we want to see thrive as well.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, well, let's get out of here, but before we get out of here, let's do this game.
Yeah.
Time
flies around here, doesn't it, Casey? You're like,
I know. Wait a minute.
Has been that long?
Do you have any,
I do wanna congrat UT and USF women.
Yes.
Are both getting women's hockey. They were announced
women's
today.
Hockey.
It's
University
going to be
Tampa, South Florida, both women hockey programs.
Yeah, it's going to be the College Hockey South Association for the 23-24 season. They announced UT, University of Miami, University of South Florida, Auburn University are all becoming teams next year, women's hockey.
Wow.
So congratulations to USF and UT in our own backyards here.
Still here against Alabama team. Nice.
Yeah, so look for I have a feeling this is going to be a stepping stone into finally getting Division I hockey for these teams.
Yeah.
And they deserve it. And Florida is really placing their mark on the map on hockey, and the fandom and everything else. So congrats.
Everything north of like Fort Myers and north, basically.
Yeah.
Anything south of Fort Myers, not so much.
So congrats.
It's with what Montreal and New York coming to town for them to finally sell out that arena down there.
Oh,
and then they had fans cheering the opposing winning goal more than their own. After that, yeah.
Wow.
So we need a volunteer.
It's like, oh, it's great here. Sorry, go ahead.
We need a volunteer that wants to play for the Thunder. So whoever comments in who's shooter can play for the Thunder. So because we tell him every time he's not here, we don't miss him. So I mean, Casey's better looking than him, is better than him. So last time he was gone in another country,
I'm a better host. We have a better flow when I'm in the top when I'm in the top left or top right, depending on your orientation. You know, it's all backwards for me. Movie magic.
So I'm putting 91 in the chat. You get to be the Thunder for our little game here. So the first person to put 91 in there will play for the Thunder. We have 4 questions, chance for 5 points.
5 points.
Yeah, that's one of our running gags around here is Casey Shooter went out of town for the playoffs a couple last year or the year before, and we were undefeated the whole time. Like he got caught. Oh, it was last year because it was like into COVID. He was in Spain, and he ended up getting like trapped over there for extra like few games, and it was like we went under. It's for work.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
What a shame.
He works hard. Listen, Shooty worked hard to get where he is. He works hard for his money.
All right. So here's the first question. And actually, this one we can all answer the same ones. Stephanie's going to play for the Thunder. She was the first one. So will Stammer hit his 500th goal on this road trip? And if so, against which team? So 1 point for yes or no, and the other point for guessing the right team. Ooh. We'll let you go first, Casey.
Okay, what was the point thing? Because I'm saying yes, and I'm saying versus Chicago.
So 1 point if he does get it on this road trip, and then another point if he gets it against Chicago.
Oh, thank you very much.
Right.
And what about Heather? Stephanie says yes against Minnesota. What do you say, Stash?
I think the obvious answer is against Chicago, but I think yes against Winnipeg.
And
I think it's going to be a GWG, by the way, also for a bonus point.
I also say against Winnipeg because he likes making records there in Winnipeg. The 60 goals.
Yeah, he couldn't do it in Toronto.
Patrick's versus Chicago, though. I stumbled upon this little statistic. So he does some things versus Chicago, and right now their average of goals let up is 3.75. Like
yeah. And I was gonna say the power play is gonna be I think a factor as well in that matchup. So
yeah, I mean I don't know, but I'm hoping, fingers crossed. Although like Winnipeg would be cooler because then he'll be home right after that. This guy is every milestone on the road, and I feel bad for him. The gods were like, "We're gonna make you talented, but we're gonna make you wait for all of it."
They tried getting it for him at home. They just couldn't get it.
They did.
Stephanie, you'll be first on this one. What defenseman will have the most points on this road trip? And now we can't pick the same defenseman. So I'm going to do Stephanie, then Stash, then you go, Casey.
Okay.
So let Stephanie answer first. We all got to pick different defensemen.
This is fun.
Stash is actually winning.
I'm leading, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh.
And Hedman.
Stephanie picked Hedman.
Really? I'm gonna say Sergachev then, because
Wow. You guys
go ahead, Casey.
Wiggle room. Perfect.
Yeah. Perfect.
A couple 2-assist games.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go Chernak.
Yeah.
Cherney.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Those are all good. Those are all good answers. Like because our blue line, you never know where the contribution is going to come from, but you know it is.
Right.
It's going to happen.
Okay, Stash, you're first on this. Can't pick the same one. Who has the most shots on goal during this whole road trip?
Brandon Hagel.
And then I am going to say point. Casey, who do you say?
I'm taking Kucherov. His shots on goal percentage has been pretty high lately.
Yeah, needs to go up.
And now Stephanie, who do you say has the most shots on goal during this road trip? No Hagel, no Point, no Cooch.
Yep, I was just gonna say we're all done. He's chasing 500. We aren't picking Stamkos. I'm sitting here looking at this. I'm like, nobody's picked the captain yet. He's trying to hit 500. I have a feeling he's probably going to be shooting a lot. But
this tells you how talented these guys.
This one we can all pick. We can pick the same on this one, so it doesn't matter which order we go in here. What's their record on these 3 games?
2-3. They win 2.
3-0.
Sorry, they win 2, lose 1. I don't know.
2-1.
Yeah, thank you. I'm uncaffeinated. I can't have caffeine.
Oh no!
In this new year.
Oh.
Stephanie also says 2-1. I'm saying 3-0.
Oh.
I just feel they're on some kind of other level right now.
I feel like they're finally on a run. I feel you, man. Like I
get nervous being too positive with these teams.
Me too, because you got Minnesota and you have Winnipeg.
Back and then Minnesota.
Well, here's the thing, though. That's the recipe, though, too. Right. That's the recipe, right? 2 out of every 3. If you win 2 out of every 3 games, you're going to make the playoffs because you win 2/3 of games. So, like, 2-1 though isn't a safe bet. It's a great bet. Like that's what you want. You don't expect your team to really win every game unless you're crazy fans and think the sky is falling because you lost back-to-back games for only the 3rd time this season. Meanwhile, teams are having only winning 8 so far total. But yeah. I don't take those things seriously. But right now, I think they are on a run, and I got to go 3-0 this week. I got to.
All right.
Even with the back-to-back, I got to go 3-0 here.
All right. When do we find out about these answers?
Next
week. Tune in next week.
You're gonna post them on Saturday. I can check.
You got to.
I'll tweet at you and let you know. So before we go, let's let everybody know where they can find you on your social media.
Hold on, whoa. Let's recap the score and let everybody know.
I don't know.
Next week.
I don't know. He didn't send me the score now. Yeah.
Great production notes from our producer.
Yeah.
Counter doesn't send us full notes. Awesome. We all know I'm still winning though. That's for sure.
Yeah. Because we didn't do any. We had a week off last week, so it didn't change.
And then the week before that, it was like
polls.
It was like a poll, and it was like who makes the best Santa Claus, who makes the best Grinch. Well, and I lost my ass because fans never vote for me. But
it was
a blind poll. It was a blind poll.
I was going to say nobody knew unless they watched. They didn't know who it was. But like it was who would drink all the eggnog. And of course, I picked. I picked Big Rig, and of course, Big Rig took it. So but there was. I only got 2 out of it. I think Stephanie, she also had 2. As for the Thunder, and then Shooter had 1, and Stash had 0.
I had a 4-point lead going into that, and I had a 1-point lead.
Yep.
So I needed him. But when it
Casey, tell everybody
hard-hitting facts, I'm clearly, the bee's knees around here. So
he's convincing himself so well. No, I believe you. Yeah, at the Sports Case, KASE is where you can find me on all social platforms. At Odyssey Sports is exactly how you think it sounds, and then Keely and I have at Pucks and Bolts. For our show, talking all things Lightning and hockey. And we're getting Instagram up and going so we can have all the videos and stuff. And then, of course, I think I told you guys this last time, but most of the covers that I do is under my own digital media company at the Sports Case Media. So everything at the Sports Case initially, and then you can figure out every other thing that I've got going on outside of that. And occasionally, if you're at a game here or there and JP Peterson is gone, you'll see me up on the big screen. I've got to cover for him once this season. I got to do Gender Night last season, and so luckily I get to kind of fill in there and learn so much from JP, Franzone, Steven, all these great guys. So yeah, if you guys want to follow along, it's at the Sports Case, KASE.
Well, we would definitely appreciate you filling in for our third wheel this week while he's off doing whatever it is that he was doing. Such a trooper, hanging in for the whole show. And we go kind of long around here, but that's what we like to do. And it was just a great time.
Just a reminder, you guys can go on
outro.
monkeycoffee.
I was literally getting there, but go ahead. Do it. No, you do it.
Just a reminder, you guys can go. It's only until midnight tonight. It's only for We the Thunder. He set it up today for We the Thunder. Discount code GOAL10 for 10% off of your Monkey Cult coffee. So grab that. Like Stash said, if you're looking to go to one of the games this week and don't have tickets, if you go to SeatGeek, use the code WTTPOD for $20 off your first SeatGeek order. So anything else before we get out of here?
No. I can't wait to get back to reality. My son goes back to school tomorrow, so like I get to go back to my normal routine after the last 2 weeks. No, I mean that's it. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit up our people. I can't wait to get my Monkey cold brew morning coffees going on. I'm counting the days. That being said, thanks Matt. Thanks everybody out there. Thank you again, Casey.
Of course, thanks for having me.
And Shooter, don't hurry back. No, I'm just kidding, man. We love you guys. I hope you all had a happy new year. Let's watch some away games. Until then, we'll see you next Wednesday. This has been We the Thunder. Don't forget to be the Thunder.